All right, cool. So again, thanks for everyone for joining us. So today we're going to be going through the 8 pillars of marketplace success. And this has been a long time coming. I've been planning on doing this masterclass for quite a while. And yeah, so it's really good to be here and actually presenting it all to you. As I mentioned before, there's going to be a ton of content here. So hopefully you'll find a lot of really great value from it. Yeah, so let's kick off. So one of the first things I'll get you to do is jump on over to marketplaceplaybook.com/8-pillar-MC. And on that page, you'll find where you can download the link to the marketplace map, which you can see here on the right-hand side. And there'll also be some other bits of information there for you as well. So just thought I'd mention that while we get started. Has everybody got that URL? Actually, I might just chuck that in the chat window so you have it ready to go. And if you have any trouble with that, let me know. It's a new link, and I'm hoping there's no bugs that kind of pop up, but let me know if you do have any problems with it at all. Okay, so during this masterclass, what are we going to cover? So we're really going to be diving deep into the 8 pillars that you need to master in order to have a successful marketplace. And also, how can you approach building a new marketplace using the 8 pillars as a way to build a really strong foundation. And also how you can improve traction and growth for an existing marketplace using the 8 pillars. And there'll also be a whole of extra stuff that we'll go through as well. But that is it in a nutshell. So we're going to cover a lot of information. So you might find that it's best to turn your phone off just so you're not interrupted, and also grabbing a pen and paper. That'll be useful for you. So before we get started, let's have a bit of a chat, I guess, about who we all are. I'd love to know more about what you guys are up to and what your interests are in marketplaces. But before I ask about that, I'll give you a bit of an introduction to myself, particularly for those who don't know me yet. So my name's Bec Faye. I am from Sydney in Australia. And as you can see, I have a son. He's about 19 months old now, so he certainly keeps me very busy. But when I'm not entertaining him, I am all about marketplaces. So I've been in UX and UI design, tech startups over the last 10, 12 years now. And in that time, I've also been head of digital for a VC, which was certainly a very interesting time in my life to really get an insight as to what it's like to be on the other side of the startup world, essentially. So we're having startups pitching to us for a change, which was interesting. I've specialised in marketplaces since 2014 now, and down the bottom there you'll see a few of the different platforms that I've worked with, and there's a whole ton of others that I've worked with as well. So I've also built multiple two-sided marketplaces and platforms, including the Wholesome Dollar. Now the wholesomedollar.com, that is my big passion project, I guess. It is my big main project that I really love working on. And I'm going to show you a story about that in a minute. Now, I'm super passionate about how technology can help us to live happier, more purposeful lives. And that's where the Wholesome Dollar really helps me to really explore that. And the Wholesome Dollar is my way of changing the world. It's also the beginning of where my fascination came from as far as the sharing economy, marketplaces, platforms, and also the challenges that are being faced by marketplace entrepreneurs. When I was working, focused 100% on the Wholesome Dollar back before my son was born. Every day I was having these conversations with marketplace founders that were struggling with the same kind of challenges over and over again. And I found that was really interesting. And I found that through talking to them, a lot of my experience that I'd gained in the last 12 years, being with the tech startups and with UX and things like that, I found that there's a lot of problems that they were facing were things that I'd had a lot of knowledge about. And that really kind of caught my interest. So I found that to be a very curious area, which is what's led me down to the path of where we are now. And I'm on a mission. As I mentioned before, I really see that there is a big opportunity to change the world in one way, shape or form, utilising technology. And I think marketplaces are a really awesome way of doing that. Just going on that topic there, as you can see, I think there are huge a huge array of the ways that marketplaces can actually change the world, things from car sharing to enabling people in third world countries to access things that they wouldn't normally be able to access. And that's a big, really key interest of mine. Also helping families to live better lives and have access to more flexible income, things like that. So what I found though through the Wholesome Dollar was that the best way for me to make an impact was actually by empowering people like you, people who were interested in marketplaces, who had an idea for a marketplace, and had an idea for a marketplace, people who are working on marketplaces and focused on building up a really big following with the marketplace and having a huge impact in their way. If I could empower them to make their impact, that would flow and have a flow-on effect. Now, that's all about me. I'd love to know a little bit more about what you guys are, where you guys are all at. Whether you want to turn your microphone on now and kind of chime in and let me know what your experience is to date, that'd be awesome. Otherwise, just in the chat window there, feel free to jump in there as well. Who here has an existing marketplace? Now, I know there's a couple of you floating in there that do have existing marketplaces, so I do know you, so I'm going to assume that there's a few of you out there. And also for people who are interested in building marketplaces. Again, I know there's some of you out there as well. So, and excellent. Thanks, Ursh, for sharing there. That's really interesting. So Ursh has just mentioned that she's really interested in learning more about the friction points where online communities can help. And that's really, really interesting. So it's great to get some insights there. And from what I know of you who's here so far, I believe we have a few different people who are of different tech levels. Some beginners, potentially some that are more intermediate and maybe more of the professional level. Thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing. So you're at the idea stage. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So it sounds like there's a few people here still in the early stages. Excellent. So we do have quite a range of people then here in the room. So I'll try and cater for that as we move forward through the presentation. Very good. Thank you, Scott. Okay, so a few notes before I start. So the 8 pillars that I'm about to share with you is something that's always evolving. As we know, technology moves fast. So the 8 pillars is a framework essentially that evolves with that as technology and strategies and things like that change. So this is something that will last for quite a while, even though it will evolve. In this masterclass, we do have entrepreneurs of all levels. So this particular masterclass is designed to give you a really good idea of the 8 pillars framework. But for those of you who are on the more advanced topic, up to the more advanced areas, that's something that we'll cover in later masterclasses as well. Now, I don't know everything about marketplaces. It's really impossible. There was a point a few years ago I was hoping I could know absolutely everything about all the aspects of marketplaces, but once I started learning more about them, it just became ridiculous. So this framework is all about sharing my framework that I've developed based on my experience, and it's just the beginning. And let's just say the world is full of a lot of really great, smart people, and I'm really keen to connect with them all and bring them to you in a way that helps you to utilize this 8-pillar framework. So who's this masterclass for and what can you expect from it? So if you're thinking about building a marketplace, this will be a really great introduction for you, and you'll have more specific resources that I can send to you as well afterwards, so feel free to reach out for those. If you already have a marketplace, a platform, directory, or a listing site, this will be a reminder for some of the aspects, but I am pretty sure this is going to give you a brand new way of actually looking at your marketplace, and it'll help to give you clarity and give you a lot of ideas as to where you can focus to actually take your marketplace to the next level. Now you'll notice that I use the word marketplace throughout all the things I talk about, but this can apply to platforms, to directory sites, listing sites as well. Now, if you're an agency or a freelancer that's also interested in marketplaces, this is also a great way of kind of getting up to speed with what you'll need to know as far as working with marketplaces. Now, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. Okay, so now I want to share with you a story, and this is a story about where this framework came from. So going back 3 years ago, I was staring blankly at my screen. I was sitting in front of the Wholesome Dollar, and I was feeling completely overwhelmed. I was sitting there frozen, and I had absolutely no idea what to do next. I knew that I was onto something, but my head was full of so many different thoughts. My head was spinning, and I was being pulled in so many directions. I had this grand plan, this vision of something that could change the world, but something was holding me back and I had no idea what it was. So over the next few months, I struggled from there, and I was trying one thing after another, constantly being pulled in one direction after another. And I felt like I was drowning. It was something that was just so frustrating. And the fire that I had originally had for the Wholesome Dollar, it was starting to die. I was just getting so frustrated and overwhelmed. I was out of energy, and I was getting really, really angry with myself for losing my mojo. I'm a really passionate person, particularly when it comes down to my business and wanting to do the best that I can for my users. And I just felt like I was letting everybody down. And the more angry I got, the less productive I became. And then at this point, I knew something had to change. So at this point, I went and took a holiday. I went away for 3 months and thought I'd spend the whole time sitting back, reading, reflecting, and getting a bit more perspective essentially back in my life, because I had been so completely focused on this one thing, on the Wholesome Dollar, that I just had lost all perspective, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. Now, ironically, here I was, we're in Vietnam, and I was sitting there reading a book, having a coffee, and for those of you who've had Vietnamese coffee, you know it's pretty strong. And while I was sitting there, it hit me. Suddenly I knew what was missing. Suddenly I knew what I needed. I needed this framework. I needed something that would really help me to really guide me. And all of a sudden, all of this information that I had been reading over the last few months, it started coming to life. In my mind, I could see all of these drawings kind of coming together in a series of steps. And it all started to make a lot of sense. So I reached my pen and I started scribbling furiously, and it seems really obvious now. But this is what I needed. It was something that would guide me and really simplify things down in my marketplace. Something that I could turn back to anytime I was feeling overwhelmed. So, and in that instant, I started seeing my marketplace in a whole new light. I saw a checklist in my mind, and suddenly the areas that were holding me back became really obvious. I realized that I'd actually been wasting my time and energy on the wrong things. I'd been driving traffic and trying to scale, but I was missing these fundamental flaws. I had these fundamental flaws. I was really missing these vital elements. My foundations weren't right. And I knew people would love my website. I was getting fantastic feedback from all the users that were coming through. People were sharing it. It was working really, really well, except for the fact that they weren't converting into anything that I would consider profitable. And this is one of the things that had been holding me back, because I could kind of sense it, but I hadn't been able to put my finger on it. So suddenly with this new framework, I had a way of actually doing a simple review, which then saved me months and months of trying to do things the hard way, and it allowed me to come back to the things that were really important in the business. And this is when I knew the solid foundation is really a key to a marketplace. And I reflected on all the conversations I'd had with marketplace founders before through the Wholesome Dollar. And I could see that they were all struggling with the same kind of things. And a lot of them had been focusing on scale, but looking back now, I could see that they were actually missing a couple of little pieces of the puzzle that was making it really hard for them. So I knew that this would change everything in the way that I would work with marketplaces and the way I would see every marketplace in the future. So this is what I want to share with you today. So let's take a look at a solid foundation and what that means for you. Now, earlier on, I sent you the link for where you can download the marketplace map. I might just repost that again in the chat. Okay, all right. I've just sent you through the link again in the chat window there as far as where you can download the marketplace map. But essentially, this is the baseline for where you get that solid foundation from. and it is based around the 8 pillars. Under each pillar, there is a number of elements that you'll need to continually optimize and master. Now, as you'll see over here, you have your supply and your demand on either side. At the core, these are things like your value proposition, how you measure success as far as bringing those sides together. You have your tools and interactions for both your supply side and your demand side. And as you can see, you've got arrows that kind of bring all of this together into the middle. Now, underlaying all of that, you have your matchmaking abilities, you have your trust and credibility, you have your business model, profitability, your growth, and your emotional layout. So all of these pillars here are what makes up a marketplace. And I reflected on this marketplace map as to how it would fit in with your established marketplaces like Airbnb, Uber, and Etsy, and they all fitted into this model. They all had mastered and were continually optimizing each of these pillars. So I knew that this would be something that would be really helpful, not only to me, but for all of the clients that I'd worked with and all the people I'd spoken to in the past. So I knew that this was something that was going to be useful. Again, there's a link for downloading the marketplace map, but yeah, I'll leave that in the chat window. Now, essentially, there's a couple of different ways we can kind of look at the 8 pillars. Now, if you imagine the 8 pillars as being a bit of a checklist, if you have an established marketplace, essentially it involves doing a review of the marketplace, identifying weaknesses, optimizing, and continuing around in that kind of loop. If you are looking at building a strong foundation from the very beginning, so in other words, you're still in the idea or discovery phase for your marketplace, you can actually apply this checklist thinking during the discovery process. And I have a process that I outline, which won't be actually in this particular masterclass, but it's something that I'll cover later on, which can really help you to actually build up that strong foundation from the beginning. So hopefully by now you've all got the marketplace map, and you've got your pen and paper, and we'll go through all the pillars now. Does anybody have any questions up until now?
No, but there's a couple of people unmuted. I'm wondering if Lauren and Anthony could mute themselves.
Cool. Thanks very much, Ash. Okay, moving on. Okay, so what makes a solid foundation? These are the 8 pillars. So we start off with the sides. Now under the sides, under your pillar 1, this is the most important pillar of the whole marketplace. Now, obviously there's all of these elements that you see in the marketplace map, all of these 8 pillars are critical, but the reason why I believe that the sides are the most important, if you don't understand your users correctly, if you misinterpret something or there's something there that you're missing, it will really make a huge difference in your success, essentially. If you don't understand aspects that you can see over here on the right-hand side, it's going to make your life really, really challenging. So things that are covered under the sides, you've got your segments, so understanding who your users are, and now under your supply and your demand side, you'll have various segments, and you'll have your early adopters. But you also need to understand how their needs, desires, and mindsets are different. This is particularly true for your supply versus your demand, but it's also true for your segments that you have as well. Now, if you're just starting out with your marketplace, starting off with one particular segment, your early adopters is the way to go, and really focusing on getting that right, keeping in mind the vision as to where you want to go with your marketplace. Now, the next thing that is really important are your fears and objections, and I'm going to go through these in a lot more detail in a second. Then you've got your true success, your journey to true success, your moment of wow, and your success metrics. So, being clear on your segments. Who are your primary segments? Who are your early adopters? Now, I've just spoken about those, but really understanding those segments initially will help to lay the groundwork that you need. And what do they need, desire, and what mindset are they in? Now, if you can get to the bottom of all of this, it really puts you in a position where you can really start to understand their needs. Now, there's some particular exercises that I work through with clients who have a marketplace or are working on building a marketplace, where we can actually start to extract this information into a way that's really, really useful that you can actually apply into your marketplace itself. And that is something that will become a tool that you'll use over and over again. And it's critical not only in the platform itself that you're building, but also all your communications as well. Now, understanding the fears and rejections. This is all about understanding what holds them back from using your platform. What do they fear? What kind of questions do they have? What kind of objections do they have? Now, the reason why I think this is one of the most important under this pillar, particularly for those of you who are trying to disrupt the way that people are doing things, trying to disrupt habits, things like that. If you're disrupting something, you really need to get to the bottom of why on earth would somebody change what they're already doing to do it the new way that you're offering. And what are the hesitations that are around that? Now, if you can nail that in the communications, in your messaging, but also in the technology, you're in a really great place to start. Now, how do your users truly measure success? Now, this is really important, and a lot of people jump to the conclusion where they make an assumption about how their users will measure success on their platform. What I highly recommend, though, is actually making sure you speak to your real users and understand how they measure success. Now, I call it true success because it is really about getting that from their mouths. You want to know exactly how they measure success, because the problem is with assumptions, we're not always right. And if you're building your whole platform based on assumptions, you're going to miss the mark. And they're the little things that can make a huge difference in the long run. Now, if you think of the true success as essentially a subconscious checklist that they go through. So as they move through the platform, so for example, if you look at Airbnb. So Airbnb, I want to go on holiday. I want to go and find, I have this idea in my head as to what kind of property I want to stay in. So true success to me might be finding the right property, being able to have a good experience in finding that property on the website, being able to submit a request for booking or to book instantly, and for me to very, very quickly find out that yes, I have got the place that I want. Now it goes beyond that. So for me then it's a matter of seamlessly being able to go in, have the holiday, go and stay at the place, have that whole transition, the interaction with the host to be as seamless and painless as possible, but also be delightful as well. So if it's a really great experience throughout that whole journey, then I return home and I reflect on my holiday, and that whole experience has been a complete success. So along that journey, there have been multiple points that I've kind of basically checked off in my mind, essentially, to say, yes, this has been a great experience. And the more checks you can get, or the more places you can actually wow people along that journey, how you're going to get referrals, essentially, and how people start talking to their friends about you and raving about you. So what does their journey to true success look like? Now, this is where we start to actually map out the journey to true success. And this is actually mapping out that full journey. And then we need to understand how we can actually remove friction from along this journey, and also the conversion funnels that happen along this path as well. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Now, I'm sorry, that graphic's a little bit on the blurry side, but you'll get the idea. So essentially, if you imagine this top line here are your supply side, and the line down here are your demand side. Now, essentially, as you can see, they both move through their own path to their own true success. And there are a series of points along here that have to happen to make that successful. Now, your job as a marketplace entrepreneur or a marketplace founder is to actually get people from A to B as quickly and effortlessly as possible. Now, I'm going to go into more details on that soon. But essentially, the next factor that you want to be considering on your side pillar is how do you actually measure success? And this should be encompassing how your users measure success and having metrics that actually dictate of the, yes, we know that 90% of people that have gone through our platform are super happy, they've met their true success, and we know that we couldn't have given them a better experience. So actually having a real hard number around that. Now you'll also want to factor in how that has measured for you as a business as well. Now the next thing is, what is their moment of wow? And this is basically understanding that journey that we've just mapped out, understanding along there, where in that point can we give them a moment of wow? Where is that moment where they just get it? particularly if you're providing them with a new opportunity, a new way of doing something. How can you provide them with that eureka moment where they just get it, and from then on they'll never look back? So for example, that could be your first Uber ride, or it could be your first Airbnb stay where you're like, wow, that was actually really easy. That amazed me. That I had an awesome black shiny car back in the early days of Uber. But those moments where you just get it. So how can you recreate that experience for all of your users? Okay, so that's it for pillar number 1. Now, pillar number 2, at your core. Now, this is where everything starts to come together. You have your value proposition. You have what's actually being exchanged. You have things like your elevator pitch, your brand messaging, marketplace equilibrium, your key success metrics, your marketplace health score, and your core conversion funnels. So what we've identified in pillar number 1 is what's important to our users and the kind of language that we might need to use in order to resonate with them. Now, this section here is about how do we actually create powerful value propositions for both sides of the market. Now, you need to remember that your marketplace, you are talking to 2 completely different user groups. So you need to be able to have a value proposition that speaks to each of those groups individually. I do see some people that tend to fall into the trap of trying to communicate the same message to everyone and trying to somehow combine the value propositions. But really what works best is if you can really focus on delivering a really clear message to each of those groups. Now, you may even find if you have subgroups beneath each side, you might even have other value propositions that kind of sit under there as well. Now, you really want to be able to test each of these value propositions and really refine it. And this will be an ongoing process for you throughout your journey. Now, once you have figured out what your value proposition is, then it's all about trying to clearly communicate it to each side of your marketplace. Now, you need to remember that not all user journeys are equal. So you want to be able to guide your users through the platform based on their needs and then clearly communicate it as you go. So as you can see here on Airbnb, homepage is focused towards planning your next trip. So obviously towards the traveler. And if you go into the website via the host section, you're starting to get a really clear messaging like earn money as an Airbnb host. So it's really clear, straight to the point, and very different. Now, it might seem obvious, but I do see a lot of people that try and have a homepage that communicates to everyone in one go. And in actual fact, a lot of people will tend to either come in as one particular user, and if they're interested in becoming a supplier, generally they'll go and find the supplier button, or they'll come in via a back door, essentially straight onto that supplier side. But it can be different for each website. On Turo, as you can see here, you have way better than a rental car, and then you've got let your car work for you. So again, 2 very clear different messages. Now, if you actually go out and look at a lot of the home pages, you'll see what I'm talking about there, where there are very clear, distinct messages to one specific user group rather than trying to do a blanket messaging for everyone. Etsy as well, and Uber. And Uber have quite a few different subsections as well, particularly for each of their different sub-businesses. And once you have all of that, how do you have a clear way of measuring success on your marketplace? A key success metric essentially helps to sum up the health of your overall marketplace and can be a great way of monitoring how well your marketplace is performing. And that might be made up of a few different factors, which you can then bring into a core health score. The next key thing, and this is one of the areas that I really struggled with the wholesome dollar and didn't quite realize it, but was really having a clear conversion funnel and being able to actually monitor that. Conversion funnels basically mean how do you get somebody into that journey essentially that we've just mapped out, but what are the key interactions that they need to take in order to actually move forward and progress to the point where they actually are going to convert into a sale, so to speak, or a transaction. Whether that's a supplier listing on the platform, what's that the listing process like, and what's that onboarding process like to become, so that they become an engaged, active participant. And on the demand side, what does the conversion funnel look like for them? So for example, in the case of Airbnb, how does somebody move forward through the funnel. How do they find a listing that suits them? How do they review the listing, make a booking, and then move through the booking process? And then being able to actually track how people are progressing through those funnels. And you may have a few different core funnels, but it's important to have real clear clarity around what that looks like and how that's performing. And then what you want to be able to do from there is actually be able to measure how people are flowing through that funnel and where people are falling out of the funnel. And that's where you start focusing your attention on building up and optimizing your marketplace. How do you measure marketplace equilibrium? As we know, one of the biggest challenges with marketplaces is how to actually balance supply and demand. So being able to actually measure and monitor what that balance looks like is really, really important. And that's something that we look at under the core. For pillar number 3, we have tools and interactions. So this is where we actually start to look at the actual tools and functionality that your users need in order to get through that journey to true success. So we have things like the key interactions, including the high value and high risk interactions. You have the interaction failure and friction points, and tools and features, and then also how do we empower users. Now, it's critical to really understand what are the key interaction points that happen along the journey to true success. Let's have a look. So as we saw before, we've got the supply, we've got the demand. We know that they're both moving along that path to their true success. And along that journey, there are interactions that it will have with the platform itself, and there are also interactions that they'll have with each other. Now, what you'll find is along that journey, some of these interaction points are actually either higher risk, meaning that there's a high potential that something could go wrong at that particular interaction point. That could be an interaction that happens between these two people. For example, in the case of Airbnb, when you need to request to book, that request to book functionality means that there could be a delay from the host actually accepting the booking. And if they take too long to get back to the person, therefore that interaction will just fail, essentially. So there's a lot of need for that host to reply back very quickly, otherwise the interaction could fail completely. Now, Airbnb have obviously introduced the instant booking functionality, which enables this interaction to actually really, really improve, and the friction around that is a lot less on the listings that actually have the instant booking available. Now, one of the key things that I've noticed with marketplaces, and I'm sure you may have heard of this before, but the reason why marketplaces fail is the fact that these interaction points, there are too many friction points along this journey. These interactions fail, and if too many interactions fail, that's where things will start to fall apart. So if you think of Airbnb back in the early days, what could have gone wrong was the fact that people were taking way too long to actually respond back to bookings. And in the end, the people who were looking for a place to stay just got fed up and ended up just going to the normal hotel booking site that they were used to going to, because what was the point? Nobody was getting back to them. So that's really, really important. So at any stage in your marketplace journey, no matter whether you're just starting out or whether you're growing an established marketplace, it's all about focusing in on how do you reduce this friction along this journey, and how do you really reduce those the interaction failure points, and particularly focusing in around the ones that are high risk and the ones that are high value. Now, by high value, I mean ones that have, like the booking example. We know that money will go through the Airbnb platform. Airbnb make money at the point where that transaction takes place. So knowing the high value interaction point is, by identifying that, it means that we can prioritize that in the way we actually work with it. The same with the high risk interaction points as well. This just highlights the high risk interaction points and the high value ones. And then once we've identified those, it's all about reducing friction along that journey. And I've pretty much just spoken through all of that. But again, essentially the goal is to create that frictionless journey and get your users to their end goal as soon and quickly as possible, and to make it as enjoyable as possible as well. And above all else, avoid interaction failure. Now, the next aspect is looking at tools and features. So if you are starting out in your marketplace build process, generally everything we've covered up to now is actually a lot of the discovery work that I tend to encourage people to do. And it's actually quite a fair bit down the path where we actually start talking tools and features. I find it's a lot of people tend to jump straight into the building tools and features, or talking about what kind of tools and features and functionality they need for their platform, before they really understand what that journey looks like. If you can actually map out what that journey looks like, identify those really important interaction points, you can then figure out, all right, how can we actually introduce tools and features at that point that will help to reduce that friction, remove the interaction failure, things like that. So this is the point where we actually start to really look at those tools and features. And yeah. And from there, it's all about what can you do to actually empower your users, and how do you get them to their true success as quickly as possible. So empowering your users, particularly on your supply side, can be really valuable. So for example, you may have passive sellers on your marketplace. Now it's all well and good having their listing on their website, but if they come along, list their room for rent, but then they don't do anything with it, they're relying fully on you to actually do all the marketing and driving all the traffic to their booking, so they have bookings through their platform, through their listing. So this point here is about really thinking about, all right, how can we actually empower our users so that they can be successful? And that might be a matter of helping them with giving them marketing materials that they can use within their local community. Maybe it's giving them extra tools they can use, or educating them about how they can use your platform better. And really thinking outside the box as to how you can actually empower them. Pillar number 4 is matchmaking. Now, as a marketplace, a directory, a listing platform, whatever it happens to be that you're in, it's all about being able to connect the dots. It's about connecting somebody who has something to somebody who wants something, essentially. Now, this means that you need to make sure you can successfully matchmake those two sides in one way, shape, or form. Now, it's all about figuring out, all right, what is the most suitable matchmaking strategy for your business at that particular point in time? And you might find that the best strategy actually changes depending on what stage you're at. If you're in the early traction stage, you might find that you need to start off with a different model, different strategy to what you would once you've actually got the critical mass that you need to succeed. Do your users want to be able to search, or is that going to be the best way for them to be able to find what they need? This obviously works well if you have got listings for them to search through, but if you're, again, in the early stages, somebody might come in here, do a search for jobs in Australia, but if you're based over in, if your platform's got listings over in the US, you are not going to be able to find any listings, which is obviously going to give a very poor experience. So in that case, you may need to opt for something more of a recommendation type engine that'll actually allow people to come in and have a request as to what they want, and then you can behind the scenes scramble to essentially get the things that they want. So it's all about kind of really being mindful about, all right, what stage are you at and how can you apply the right type of matchmaking strategy for that particular point in time. Do the people want to browse, and is that going to work, again, according to how much supply you have available? And this comes down to making sure that you don't go too wide too quickly with your marketplace. By that I mean you don't want to have too many categories if you're just starting out. You want to try and start in a niche, essentially, or a vertical, and really focusing in on getting the supply built up in that side before you expand out. And same thing works location-wise as well. Do they want to place an ad, for example, like Upwork? In that case, it's all about posting an ad and having people come to them. Or do they want to place a request? Now, Snapper, you actually go through and place a request of what you want, and then a recommendation is sent back to you. And that's something that you can potentially either do automatically through technology, or in the early days, you can actually mimic that and do it manually behind the scenes. Now, if they do a search or browse, do they find what they're looking for? What happens next if they don't? Can they find enough high quality, trustworthy results to feel confident in your marketplace? Is the search effective, intuitive, and are the results easy to filter? Now, these are all things that some marketplaces can struggle with and can make a big difference, particularly to start to get really serious about what you're doing. Remember, at the end of the day, if somebody can't actually find what you're looking for, what's the that's what you're there for. If they can't find what you're looking for, even if you do have the actual listings they're looking for and they're not able to find it, what's the point? Now, if they place an ad or request, do they receive enough high quality, trustworthy responses back that match their needs in a timely manner? Or are the responses actually disappointing and full of time wasters and enough to turn them away from your platform forever? Remember, first impressions count. So it's a matter of being able to really provide and being smart about how you actually match up the requests. Is your matchmaking algorithm a recommendation and is your matching algorithm or recommendation engine effective? Now, regardless of whether it's automated or manual, and we've just touched on that, but you really want to make sure it's actually effective. Again, if you're matching up people with the wrong things, they're going to have a bad experience. And above all, don't make users think. Again, it comes down to removing friction. So if any point in your user experience, you're making them think too hard, they get lost, they get confused, it's going to turn them away. Now, pillar number 5. Now, this is where it's all about trust and credibility. Now, particularly in the sharing economy, but even more so just in the wider community, we know trust and credibility is everything. And this, we look at how do you actually build that into your marketplace. So it's all about creating a great first impression and a second and a third. Don't let doubt creep into the minds of your users. This is particularly important in the early days as you build up enough high quality supply. You want to make sure the quality of supply is high, otherwise it will hurt you in the long run. And this is where you can look at things like qualification processes, curation, policies. How do you actually manage to make sure that the supply is meeting a particular standard? How do you build build credibility and trust throughout the journey to success? So on that journey to success, we looked at how can you actually add more trust and credibility along that journey. And this might be a matter of actually bringing out your map again and having a look at the journey and then starting to jot down, all right, some ideas about how you can actually build those trust and credibilities into that journey, and then looking at your platform about where you can add the badges on, or where you can add the testimonials, or where you can add the insurance and things like that. So starting with that journey level, journey map, and then taking a step back, and then that's where you start mapping it down into your actual platform itself and look at how you design it into your platform. And then how do we add trust signals? So things like testimonials, building up your reputation, building up social proof, examples of customers served, mentions in the press, your testimonials, your years of experience, any awards you might have won, offering free trials, having a professional looking website can certainly help so much in building credibility. Having a privacy policy so people understand where they stand. Having correct spelling, things like security, getting a security seal and having that obvious on your website, payment gateway security badges, things like that. These are all the kind of things that build up points essentially in the user's mind to help them feel safe, secure, and for them to trust you. Now, obviously, all of that there is at the point of building up your reputation as a platform. But then you have the second layer is where you're actually looking at how do you build up the trust with the particular users on your platform as well. So for example, how do you help people to actually feel confident in your supply and that the supply are who they say they are and that they're high quality. And this is where it comes into reviews and ratings. This can help to really establish that trustworthiness and help people feel comfortable in dealing with the individuals on your platform. Safety and security. Now, this is a big one, particularly depending on the type of marketplace that you're running. If we look at platforms like Airbnb or Uber, where you actually have strangers coming into the car, into the house, how do you ensure that people are safe in that environment? Now, they're probably the most obvious platforms that have done that, but we can see different features that they've used and introduced in order to build up that security. And we know that that's always changing, and every time they come under scrutiny from different things that have happened, they've had to really up their game. And that's something that's ever evolving. But making sure that you, for example, babysitting apps, making sure that people are qualified, making sure that people are feeling safe with those people. There's a lot of aspects that you need to kind of consider depending on the type of platform. And this is where it really comes up to a matter of balancing out the risk that's involved with your platform with how you actually help people to feel safe. And that can be various aspects. I haven't gone into more details at the moment, but there are a bunch of different suggestions that, that are around that, which we can go into later. Insurances and assurances. So again, we know things like Airbnb have their insurance to cover you as a host, to help you feel more comfortable in people staying within your house. Now, your business model and revenue model. So this is pillar number 6. Now, just up front, this is not my area of expertise, but it's a very, very important one. And it's one area that I see a lot of people struggle in. So, but I do like to touch on it. So basically you need to make sure you have a really effective revenue model. Things like, do you work on a commission model, a listing fee model, membership subscription, a lead, a fee per lead, a freemium model, and so on. So do you have the right revenue model? And a lot of marketplaces will need to pivot. It's a matter of potentially trying one out, seeing how that works, and then changing it. But it's not always an easy change, particularly once you have users on your platform. So it's a matter of really carefully balancing that out. Profitability, scale, and your expectations. This is particularly important, I think, for those of you who are in the early days, is really being realistic about, okay, so what kind of scale do you really need to get to actually be profitable? A lot of people can underestimate what's involved. So actually sitting down and doing the numbers and seeing what needs to happen in order to scale. We know platforms like Airbnb and Uber spend millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in marketing and getting people onto their platform, and that's how they scale. But at what point does that become profitable? So really thinking through that, is investment the path you want to go down in order to become profitable? And also being aware of the fact that the way investors are looking at marketplaces change as well, depending on the different things that are happening in the market at the time. Legalities and regulations, and this is obviously a big one and quite a tough one, and we know that even like the world dominators like Airbnb and Uber still struggle with this, but it's something that you need to be aware of. Pillar number 7, your growth and retention. Now this is where we look at things like liquidity, category density, your crossover funnel, maximizing network effects, and also your retention. So one of the big problems, and this is where I was going wrong with the Wholesome Dollar, was really focusing in on trying to get traffic into the website before enhancing what you already have. Now, the problem is if you're sending in lots and lots of traffic, you're spending a lot of time and energy, money, pouring in traffic into the top of your funnel, yet you're losing people out the sides, out of your leaky funnel. You're really limiting how you can grow as a platform and how much money you can make as well. So by really focusing in on plugging these gaps as early as possible, you're going to be optimizing all that work you're doing at this top end of the funnel. So I highly recommend, particularly if you're in the growing stage of your marketplace journey, is to make sure you go back and really look at how you can optimize this funnel here and plug up those leaks. Too many times I've worked with clients where they've done all this hard work. They've got all the customers down here, down here, down here, and the credit cards have got the customers have got their credit cards out ready to pay. But something is stopping them at this point, and it could be something as simple as a really simple bug in their checkout or even their payment gateway, and that it means it's just lost money for them. They've done all this hard work, but because they haven't noticed that there's something going wrong here, it's gone completely undetected for who knows how long. So they've lost all this money where it's just a really simple fix. So really going back to the drawing board and just making sure you can plug those gaps as soon as possible is a really good idea. Now, how will you balance supply and demand as you grow? This is always the magic question, and there are many strategies out there as to how you can grow either your supply or your demand, and it is always a tricky balance. And even platforms like Airbnb still sway their focus from supply to demand in each location as their needs change, and it's a big being a marketplace. It's essentially like a huge pendulum. It's all part of the journey, essentially, all part of the fun. Location and category density. Now, this is where you look at, again, I mentioned earlier about not going too wide too quickly. You want to be able to carefully manage the expansion of your marketplace as you expand out into new categories or into new locations. And being able to monitor how this changes, having strategies in place for when you do go into a new location or new category, really refining your processes when you are focused, and then that way you can duplicate and refine as you go. Now, how do you move users from one side to the other? Now, by this I mean, for those of your suppliers, for those customers that are using your platform, how do you convert them into suppliers and vice versa? And having a strategy in place. At the end of the day, it's going to be a lot easier marketing and converting somebody who's already familiar with your brand and your platform. So what kind of strategies do you have in place to actually encourage them to transfer over to the other side and become more engaged within your platform? And how will you maximize your network effects? Now, the more users on your platform, the more valuable your platform will become. So what kind of strategies do you have in place to actually manage and maximize your network effects? And how do you retain your users? Again, we looked at the leaky funnel before, and retaining your users is another factor of that, particularly being a platform where you have suppliers that are hanging around for the long run. How can you maximize and keep them around? How can you help them to become more engaged, so that they're doing a lot of your marketing on your behalf? And how can you also get your customers coming back time and time again and actually convert them to a point where they are a regular customer of some description? Now, so here we're talking about how to retain your users. And one of the big secrets I find is the emotional layer. This is pillar number 8, which you will see underlines everything. Now, this is an additional pillar that I've added more recently after reading some really interesting articles. You see, finding the emotional key is something that will make a huge difference in retaining your users. Now, let me tell you a story as the best way of explaining this. So there was a startup over in the US, and I'm pretty sure it's AgriCode, but I can't remember exactly. So you'll have to just bear with me on that one. But essentially, they were struggling, and I could be wrong with this one, with the company. They were struggling, essentially. They'd introduced this new platform, and they were going to investors to try and get investment. And basically, when they were there with the investor looked at what they had to offer, and it was everything that should be successful, but they were just really, really struggling to get any traction. And the investors couldn't quite figure it out. In the end, they ended up going out and doing research. They went out and stayed with a farmer, and they spent some time there chatting to the farmer, watching him go about his day, and really getting really clear insights as to how he was going about his day. And what they realized was the platform, the startup, that what they were trying to do was actually, they were trying to convince people to do all of their ordering online. But what they found by being out at the farm was the fact that the farmers, the only times they'd actually speak to anybody were when they were actually previously getting on the phone and talking to the suppliers. So this really changed things. They realized that there was this whole emotional connection, this need that these farmers had for this human connection. So the farmers didn't want to use this platform because it meant that they were missing out on this human interaction, which was one of the only phone calls they'd have during the day. So once they figured out that, what they actually ended up doing was introducing the a phone support as part of their process, which meant the farmers could use a new platform while using the phone at the same time. And if they had not have actually gone out and spoken to the farmers, they wouldn't have actually realized that was what was happening, and they would have continued to struggle. Now, the other example I have, there you go. The other example I have is Strava. So Strava, they have tapped into the emotional connection, the emotional layer, when they realize that cycling as a sport can be quite lonely. But really, it's all about the camaraderie and being able to compete against each other. And once they kind of figured out that actually inspired the Strava app, which allowed people to actually compete against each other, even though they're riding remotely, riding on their own. So those kind of things really meant that increased the stickiness of the platform and allowed people to keep coming back time and time again. Now, if they hadn't have unlocked those particular emotional needs and those drivers, it would have really prevented the stickiness that they currently have. So that is the 8 pillars essentially. So can you see how they're focusing on each of these will help to position yourself for success? There's a lot of factors there, but using the framework, it makes it a lot easier to kind of go through and check off each one of those and really start to identify where the weaknesses are. Yeah, does anybody have any questions up to that point?
Hey Bec, this is Lisa from Share with Oscar.
Hi Lisa.
Hi, this is something actually about the unit economics that I wanted to touch on. So we've been in market for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
And a common question that we always get is, I guess, cost of acquisition, which we're pretty comfortable in terms of understanding.
Yeah.
But the second one is actually lifetime value.
Yeah.
And we find it really tricky as a marketplace to define lifetime value, especially because you have both the demand side and the supply side. And it's, whilst you can kind of do it for demand, for supply, I wouldn't know how to calculate that or how to even consolidate that into the one metric.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it is quite a tricky one. I would love to have an answer for you, but I don't. As I said before, I wish I knew everything about all this stuff, but I don't. It's something that I would love to find out the answer for, and it's something that I'm on a quest to kind of find the right people to speak to and actually bring together a conclusive, a place where we can actually get all this information. So yeah, I wish I had a bit more clarity on that one, but yeah, that's all I've got at the moment. But let me get back to you on that one though. I'm pretty sure I've got some references there that I can get over to you.
Yeah, no problems. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, cool. So how's everybody feeling about all that? If feeling overwhelmed from all the different aspects you need to consider, or are you ready to kind of get stuck in and make some optimizations to your platform? Cool. Well, remember earlier I said that I was feeling completely overwhelmed. So what I'm about to introduce to you is something that I wish I had much earlier in my journey. It's something that I think will help you just really strengthen your foundations and position your marketplace for the best chance of success. And it's a playbook. It's something that walks you through how to apply the 8 pillars to your marketplace journey. It's something that you can turn to whenever you need to dive deep into one of these pillars. Also a place you can turn to when you have questions, like Elisa's question there about the lifetime value. It's all about, and it's a place essentially you can come anytime that you need to, whenever you come up against some particular marketplace challenge or question. Now, the whole idea here is the marketplace playbook. So essentially this is the missing manual, and it's the go-to place you can go anytime you have a specific marketplace challenge. And it's made up of a series of plays and moves, and these are essentially all educational modules, so to speak, where you can actually come in here anytime you have an issue. You can do a search for a particular question, for example, the lifetime value. If you have a specific challenge you're coming up against where you're struggling with traction, maybe you're trying to go through the discovery process and actually scope out a marketplace build. Whatever it happens to be, you can come in here and start to find really specific solutions which are based on not only the framework that I've covered here, but also the expertise of people who have been there, done that in the industry. So that is essentially the idea behind it. And in there, you can essentially come in here, find each of the plays, and under each of those, you'll see a lot of videos, content, printables, worksheets, white files, and things like that, that will actually talk you through how to go about it. So I have a couple of use cases that I thought I might just share with you quickly. So if you're building a marketplace and you want to get off to the best start, example plays could be things like validating your idea using the 5 Success Story Challenge, defining the secret ingredients to your marketplace, and how to plan, design your marketplace for the best chance of success from the beginning. If you have an established marketplace, you might have things like how to accelerate your traction, how to build your supply. Maybe you're coming up to an investment round. So how can you actually become more investment ready? How can you avoid the leaky bucket? Looking at conversion optimization specifically for marketplaces. So that's an example of the kind of things that you could expect to find within the marketplace playbook. And other examples are when you need a bit of inspiration about some changes you're making to your platform. Let's have a look at some UX best practices that have been used through different marketplaces. And the whole idea is being that you've got the plays, the moves that will really support you through that journey, helping you to really solidify that foundation and then prepare to scale up. So what do you think? Is this something that you wish existed earlier? I know I certainly did. That time where I was sitting there completely frozen at my laptop. It would have been a place for me to come to really figure out what to do next. And do you think this could help you to actually fast track your learnings and your marketplace journey? So how does the marketplace playbook work? Essentially, plays and moves can be purchased individually, and an unlimited pass can also be purchased where you can actually access everything. And that's the main thing I want to talk to you about today, because the marketplace playbook is something I'm launching in the next couple of months. But this is only the second time I've ever mentioned this to anyone. So you guys are actually one of the really, really early adopters essentially to this. You can become early birds and get in very early for an unlimited lifetime pass, which I'll be telling you all about in a minute. So the expected pricing at launch will be as you see there, but the pricing model may change. As I said, it's still early days. I'm still trying to figure it all out. So what I'm offering essentially is a flat rate, a very low rate to kind of get your foot in the door, and that will do you for the lifetime. So no matter what happens with any changes in the future, you have your foot in the door and you have access to everything that comes down the track. So as I mentioned, lifetime access, the unlimited pass, and also included with the pass, which I'll tell you the pricing in a second, are things like the 8 Pillars of Marketplace Success white paper, which actually goes through everything I've covered today, plus a lot more in written format. You'll get a replay of the video from today as well. The focus ladder, which is a template that I created when I found that I was really struggling with where to focus with the wholesome dollar. It actually really allowed me to really focus on the most critical aspect at any point in time. And I've now used that for multiple projects ever since then. It's the thing that I always come back to anytime I'm struggling. The Marketplace Playbook community as well, which will be newly launched as the Marketplace Playbook launches, but you'll be one of the founding members of part of that. And the Marketplace Builders Cheat Sheet, which is great for those of you who are looking at building a marketplace. It'll give you a really good idea as to how you start to apply all this foundational thinking. The Marketplace Builders Process Summary as well, again, for those of you thinking about building. We have the existing, offer existing marketplaces, we've got a 24-point checklist. And my screen seems to be cutting off something. Okay, and so that all valued around the $3,600 mark. But what would it actually be worth for you though if you could uncover even just a couple of critical elements that could really hold back your marketplace? Would be $1,000, maybe $2,000. But what if you could save time? What if you could even save 3 months of your precious time or 6 months of your precious time? I know I'd give anything to kind of get those few months back where I was struggling, the amount of stress that I was feeling when I was just going round and round in circles and just working myself up into a big mess, basically. If I could undo all of that and actually have some focus back then, it would certainly be really, really valuable to me. So as an early bird, here's what you're going to get. So all that stuff that I've just been through. And what I'm doing at the moment is for $360, you'll get all of that there. Now, keeping in mind, you will have lifetime access for an unlimited pass to the Marketplace Playbook, and that's in whatever comes down the path. The big vision is to have experts from all over the world, from the top marketplaces out there who've been there, done that, helping bring all that content, extracting all of their knowledge, experience into these plays and moves that you can then watch, read from, learn from, and grab swipe files from, those kind of things. So that's the big vision. So by getting in at this point now, you're securing that for the journey that comes ahead as well. The first premium content will be coming available in the next month or two in a slow release, in a soft launch, I should say, sorry. And you'll all be part of that journey. And I'll also like to really involve you in that journey as we go. So I'm getting a lot of feedback from you guys and basically asking for your feedback along the way. So that is, in order to actually do that, you can go along to the marketplaceplaybook.com/8-pillar-offer. There should be an R on the end, which is dropped down. And on there, you'll find more information about that as well. So that's basically the story about where I've come from to get to where I am now. The story of the framework. We've covered the 8 pillars. We've gone and had a look at each of those 8 pillars, and you can see that there's going to be there's a lot of information that come under each of those elements we've kind of discussed. I could talk for days and days and days on all of this, but we don't have that much time. So I hope that's really helped give you a bit of an insight as to how to actually get started with marketplaces. If you're in the early stage, if you're an established marketplace, I hope that really helps to give you an idea as to how you can really start to optimize your journey even further, and give you a bit of a framework to come back to. As I said, that marketplace map and the checklist and things like that, that really has helped me time and time again. And that risk ladder as well that I mentioned before, the focus ladder, template, that has super helped me when I've been feeling lost. And because I know it's a horrible feeling, and we always feel like the need to put on this brave face that we know what we're doing at all times. But the truth of the fact is marketplaces are hard. Business is hard as general, but marketplaces just have that extra layer of trickiness to them. So all of this here will hopefully help you to really, really express your journey. And I'm here to support you. So please, I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love any thoughts, questions you have. Feel free to shoot me an email or contact me through the marketplaceplaybook.com. At any time, you can go on there and book a discovery session with me as well, where we can have a bit of a chat about any questions that you might have. So is there any other questions at all about any of that I've just been through before we finish up? Nope. Okay. Very good. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us today. As I said, would love to hear from you. Any questions, however I can help you. Yeah, would definitely love to help. So, okay, if there's nothing more that anybody else would like to add, I will end the call. So, excellent. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Serge. Thanks everyone else who's here as well to the end. Great to have you to the end. All right. I hope to talk soon anyway.
Thanks a lot, Bec.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Bec. I'm not quite sure. I think you have to end the recording. I don't think